So, welcome to another podcast to a message to Lightworkers, an interview series created to share and connect through our healing work and life path. Today, we are visited by Miss Teresa Helgeson. She has so much experience, and she's actually into plant music therapy. She has 20 years of sales, training, and management experience working on various Fortune 500 companies. She became a certified hypnotherapist at the Day of Miracles School of Integration Healing in 2003, with specialization training in cellular release therapy and medical hypnosis. She studied sound healing with sound pioneer Jonathan Goldman in 2006 and became a member of the Sound Healers Association. In 2008, she attended the International Center for Reiki training and became an Usui Reiki, Ryoho Reiki Master, and Karuna Reiki Master. She continued her studies through the Infinite Light Healing Study Center, Incorporated, where she became a Reiki crystal practitioner and Reiki drumming practitioner. Then her studies took her to the Temple of Peace in the UK, where she became an Atlantean Reiki master. Teresa, known as the Plant Music Whisperer, started her journey in 2007 with the plant music and discovered a new form of sound healing using plants. She has conducted several studies on the healing effect plant music therapy has on the body, mind, and spirit, and conducts plant music therapy workshops and concerts around the country. Through her training with plant spirits, she has honed her skill as a shaman and become a plant spirit communicator, plant medicine facilitator, and plant music therapist. After receiving a divine message from Archangel Metatron in 2012, Teresa began sharing her healing sound baths with the public using plant music therapy, drums, gongs, crystal, and Tibetan bowls, tuning forks, and the voice. Benefits of her sound bath include reduced pain, stress, and anxiety, promotes deep relaxation and spiritual connection, improves sleep, and harmonizes emotions, removes blockages and toxins, releases old behaviors and thought patterns, increases creativity, energy, intuition, and motivation, strengthens the immune system, and stimulates circulation. Teresa, I want to welcome you to today's show, and I want to thank you again for spending time with us, sharing your story, and kind of educating us on plant music therapy.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on your podcast.
Thanks. So there's a lot of Reiki training that you've gone through.
Yeah.
There's some Reiki training that I've never even heard of before. And I kind of feel like there's a timeline, like you started with Reiki, and there's like a timeline where you kind of like deepened everything that what I feel almost guided you to plant music therapy. Would you say that's right?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So could you first start with I guess what I don't want to get into what is plant music therapy because I feel like that's a long answer, but I want you to answer that. I want you to answer that. I think first, if you could tell us more about the Reiki, that journey, and the differences between the drumming, the Karuna, the Usui, Reiki, and how that kind of led you to the plant music therapy.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as with everything in life, I believe that there are progressive steps that we take if we pay attention to how we're being guided and the signs that we're being guided through that Spirit offers us in our daily life. And if we follow those steps, then we follow this path of progression that Spirit has in store for us that leads us down our spiritual path, our purpose, whatever name you want to give it. But we embark upon several paths in our lifetime, and I believe that once we follow those guidances that were given by Spirit, some people call them God winks, some people call them synchronicities. Then we follow a natural path of progression for our consciousness and our evolution, and that's exactly what happened with me. Gosh, I haven't had anybody ask me about the progression from Reiki in a really long time. So let me think here. I started out, there's so many different schools of Reiki in trainings, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one is better or than another. They're just different. And Reiki uses symbols that the student is attuned to, and these symbols are like gateways to different forms of healing, different energies that help with healing. And so, with the different schools of Reiki, you become attuned to different symbols. So like the basic Reiki level 1, you might be attuned to one symbol. And then Reiki 2, you might have two more symbols added to that. And then so the different names of the Reiki that someone is certified in lets you know how many, basically, that there's more and more symbols or gateways of energy that they're attuned to, that they have access to when they're doing a Reiki session. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you've actually gave a really great explanation to Reiki and what you just said. What about drumming Reiki? You have drumming Reiki in there. What is that?
Yeah, so drumming Reiki, drumming in and of itself is another powerful form of sound healing. It's another sound healing tool that sound healers have in their toolbox, just like the gongs and the bowls and that type of thing. But with the drumming, each one of the sound tools has tremendous health benefits, physically and emotionally. One of the things that the drum does that not necessarily all other sound healing tools do, the gong is the only other one that does it, but the drum in particular, if you are feeling blocked and you're just feeling like you're stuck and you can't get anywhere and you've tried this and you tried that and nothing seems to be working, what the drum does is it breaks up the blockages in the cells of the body, in the energy meridians of the body. So it really breaks them up. It like unclogs the drain, so to speak, and it gets your energy flowing so you can start moving. And um, when you do a drumming session in and of itself, that's what it one of the many things that it does. When you combine Reiki with that, you're using the energy of Reiki in conjunction with the tool as a partnership in creating an even deeper healing experience. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yes, that does. And then after combining kind of sound healing along with the Reiki, you also have the Atlantean Reiki. I've
Yeah.
never heard of that before. Could you tell me
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
that?
that was probably the very first Reiki that really spoke to me, in the aspect that I used to have this dream with these symbols. And when I took Atlantean Reiki, the symbols that I became attuned to were part of the Atlantean Reiki attunements. And so it really spoke to me on a deeper level because I had been dreaming about these symbols and didn't know what they were. And so Atlantean Reiki is really popular over in the UK and over in Europe. And it brings in aspects of what is believed to be the energy symbols that they used in Atlantis in their healing chambers. And so you become attuned to specific symbols that were used back in the Atlantean era for
Wow,
healing.
wow,
Yeah,
that's really interesting. Do you find that any like of these Reikis are more powerful than the other? Because there's so many different segments, it's kind of like there has to be a
yeah,
difference in each one.
yeah, there is.
Maybe that one is more powerful than the other.
Um, wow. I don't necessarily want to say that one is more powerful than another because each one is going to speak and connect differently with the person that's been attuned to it. So, like, there's angelic Reiki out there too that doesn't necessarily work with symbols, but it works with angels. And some people who are real have a real affinity or connection to angels would really that would be a really powerful tool for them is angelic Reiki versus Reiki 1 or 2 in a Sui Reiki. Some people, all they need is Reiki 1 or 2 to become a level 2 practitioner, and the symbols that are there really are powerful to them. And so it's it's a relationship that the Reiki practitioner or master has with the symbols that creates the powerful synergy between the two. And so it's not necessarily that, Atlantean Reiki is more powerful than Asui Reiki or Karuna Reiki is more powerful than, Fire Reiki or any of those others. They're just different tools to add to your toolkit, and then the healer or the practitioner is going to resonate more with one particular variation than the others, and because of that um, connection that they have with that, it's going to make it more powerful for them.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Now, how does this tie into plant music therapy? Because plant music therapy sounds like something I've never heard of, and
Yeah.
I kind of discovered you through your daughter. She was actually and she was on the show about a few weeks ago, and she was speaking a lot about shamanism and plant medicine, and she kept mentioning your name, and then finally she's like, I'm just gonna have my mom come on here and explain it, for herself, because it's so deep, it's so amazing, it's so healing. Just let the expert kind of speak on it. So
Right.
I'm a newbie to it. I don't know much about it. I know the basics. Basically, plants have sound and the
Right.
sound has healing.
Yeah.
How did you discover this? How does this work? Tell me
Right.
everything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was an excellent interview you did, by the way. I watched it. It was a great podcast.
Thank you.
Um, plant music therapy, the way I was introduced to it was another one of those synchronistic, spiritual guidance paths that spirit sends you on, and if you're paying attention to the signs, you follow it. And what had happened is at that time, it was in 2007. So on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I had these rituals that I always do, and I did them when the kids were little. And they've evolved over time. And it used to be, everybody sets, what is it that they set on New Year's Day? Goals or whatever that they want for the year. And I had evolved to setting declarations. And so in January 1st of 2007, I set this declaration out to the universe that I wanted to have a spiritually enlightening experience for my birthday. I didn't care where it was, how it happened. I just wanted a spiritually enlightening experience. And at the time, I was working for a Fortune 50 company, and my work schedule required me to travel 3 weeks out of the month. And so I would leave either Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on my destination, and I'd be gone all week, and I'd come home Friday night. And then I'd be home on the weekend, and the following week I'd start it all over. Well, during this time, I had 3 children at home and was raising my sister. So there were a lot of child responsibilities at home. And God bless my husband. He stayed home and became the mother and father during the week when I wasn't there. And then when I was home, he could disappear as long as he wanted to give himself a break and have some fun. And I took over everything. So my ritual on the weekends was Saturday morning when I'm having my morning coffee. I'd sit and catch up with the kids and help them with homework or whatever that was, and I go through the mail, and I had a stack of mail for the whole week that would be like this. And of course, this was in 2007, long before everybody was going digital and online and all that. And so I would go through this stack of mail, and I made 3 piles. And one pile was trash, of course, and one pile was stuff that had to be taken care of immediately, like bills. And then another pile was like reading materials that I would take with me when I traveled, and I'd read on the plane or the train or wherever. And then I was going through the mail, and I found this flyer. And in 2007, people were really starting to gravitate to the internet as far as advertising events. And I was kind of perplexed that I got a flyer, an actual flyer in the mail. I got on somebody's mailing list. Didn't know how, but at the top of it, it talked about some adventure in Italy. And there's nothing wrong with Italy. It just doesn't speak to me. I don't even like Italian food. So as soon as I saw the word Italy, I went, trash. And I didn't even read it. I just put it in the trash. And so then the next week comes by, and I'm going through my stack of mail again, and I find that flyer again. And I thought, well, I put you in the trash. And I didn't even read it, put it back in the trash again. And then the third week comes around, and it's still there. And I finally went, oh, wait, I told Spirit I wanted to have a spiritually enlightening experience. I better pay attention to the signs, right? And so I finally read the flyer. It talked about going to this eco spiritual community in Italy called the Federation of Dominaher. I'd never heard of it, but this group who had sent the flyer, there was going to be this group tour, and it had a temple that this community had built. And the first thing I thought was, well, where else are you going to get a spiritually enlightening experience than at a temple, right? So I started reading it some more, and it talked about taking a sculpting class from a master sculptor from Italy. And I'd always wanted to take a sculpting class, but had never found the right one. But who better to learn from than the master sculptors of Italy, right? And then it talked about being able to tour the temples, participate in uh, summer solstice rituals that they did. And I do rituals all the time. I had privately done them for years. And so my birthday's around the summer solstice. And so we would get to participate in their summer solstice ceremony and ritual, which was awesome. And then the thing that like put me over the edge was it said that on my birthday, that we would be touring the temple and spending the night in the sacred temple, actually called the Temples of Humankind. And we would be able to meditate all night long in 4 of the sacred rooms. And in my head, I'm going, ding, 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 winner. Okay, okay, I'm supposed to go on this trip. This is where I'm supposed to go. So I signed up right away. And in June, I flew to Italy and went on this trip. And about halfway through, we were gone 3 weeks. And about halfway through, our guide came to us and said, hey, we've been doing this for years with this community, and they've never given us this opportunity before. So we have an opportunity to go into the forest and hear the music of the forest. Are you interested in going? And we're like, yeah, sign us up, right? So we go in, we're heading out to this mountain where the temple was. And on top of the temple, they call it the sacred forest. And being from Colorado and living in the Rocky Mountains my whole life, I know what a forest looks like, but I kind of wondered what a sacred forest was like, right? And I had already started my, Reiki journey and had been doing Reiki for a while when this happened. And so we stop on the side of a road, just a dirt pull off like you find in the mountains somewhere. And there's this path leading up the hill to the tree line. And as we're walking up this path and we step into the tree line, soon as I stepped into the tree line, the energy totally shifted. And because I was Reiki attuned to many different Reiki forms, I was really in tune with energy. So this is kind of where part of the connection comes in, right? Because I noticed right away this shift in the energy, and I took a step back because I thought, "What in the world is this? I don't know what." And I took a step forward again, and sure enough, it shifted. And I was like, "Wow, what is this?" And then I looked up, and as my head and my eyes looked up, it was like my inner fairy was just giggling and laughing and jumping for joy because what I saw was what I would imagine it being like on the movie set of Robin Hood. There were tree houses everywhere in this forest. And there was this web of suspended bridges that connected all these tree houses together. And I was like, yay, I'm home. Whoa, this is fun. Yay. And so what we found out is this community had 25 years prior to that had moved into the forest to learn how to live in harmony with the forest without disturbing its ecology. That's the purpose of why they moved there. And they'd been there for 25 years by the time I got there. And you could tell from the tree houses each year what they had learned the year before because each tree house was different and better and farther off the ground and bigger. And when I was there, they were building their very first 2-story tree house. And so all the tree houses were individual private quarters, except for one. It was the common area that had the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room. And so we ended up walking on the bridges over to this common area treehouse. And it was windows from ceiling to floor on 3 sides of the treehouse. And then the side that had wall was where the kitchen was. And we saw that they had a computer and a TV. And I asked them, like, how are you getting power in here? And they had figured out how to use solar energy, but you couldn't see where the solar power was coming from. And in the background is playing the most extreme angelic music I'd ever heard in my life. It really, really sounded like angels. I don't have an angelic voice, but it just sounded like angels singing. And so I asked our guide what was the name of that CD because I wanted to take it home and play it for my clients. And she took me out on this porch that was probably an 8 by 10 size porch. And there was this little house plant that was connected to all this equipment. And she says the houseplant is playing the music. And she said that what they had done is once they had figured out how to live in harmony with the forest without disturbing its ecology, they wanted to figure out how can nature communicate better with us and how can we communicate better with nature. So they read the book The Secret Life of Plants, which is an excellent book for anybody. I recommend if you're interested in this kind of topic or plants in general. That's a great book to read. It's full of research that's been taking place since the 60s on plants. And they read that book, and then someone that was part of the community was familiar with biofeedback technology. And so they decided to adapt human biofeedback technology to plants. And so they adapted it and made it work so that a biofeedback system would pick up the energy that the plant was emitting. So there's an electrode that would be connected to a leaf and an electrode that would go into the soil. And between the two, it would pick up the complete energy frequency, just like we emit energy. And though the energy we're emitting is totally dependent upon our emotional state. You know, when you're happy, you can tell. You can feel the energy if someone's happy, and someone who's really mad or angry, you can tell and don't have to be very close to them because you can feel the energy they're emitting. So they adapted it so they could pick up the energy frequency of a plant. And then that frequency is then sent to a synthesizer. And the synthesizer then translates that frequency into sound. And the sound is then given to the plant to play, and the plant plays the sound if it resonates with them. That's another topic. Plants don't play all sounds, but some do. And so that's what this plant was doing. It was playing this music. And she took us and 100 foot of extension cord and all this equipment and the plant out 100 feet into this sacred forest. We stopped at a grove of birch trees, and she connected that little house plant back up, and it was playing the exact same way it was up on the porch of the common area treehouse. And she proceeded to tell us that what they had learned was that they called this little plant a teacher plant, and that because we've created such a toxic environment on the planet, that the majority of nature has forgotten that it has a song. It's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it kind of concept, right? And so she said that what this plant, this teacher plant, whenever it plays, it's reminding all of nature around it that remember, you got a song too. You can do this, right? And so she said, we'll let this house plant play for about 10 minutes, and then we'll disconnect the house plant from the equipment and we'll connect it in the birch tree because the plant is reminding the birch tree that it has a song too. So she did. She connected it up to the birch tree, and the birch tree was really deep and powerful and majestic, and just like you would imagine something that's 100 feet tall would be, baritone music. And as soon as that birch tree started playing music, I had my very first out of body experience, very first ever, and had I equate it to the indigenous people will go on vision quests, and sometimes as a passage of life, sometimes to get deep clarity. And this to me was something similar to that because I don't know where I went. I know I was out of my body, but I saw this kind of like this movie play out before me. And in this movie were all kinds of things that I didn't quite understand at that time, but they were all related to the plants playing music. And then at the end of the movie, it ends up with this big, grandiose ending. And then the movie stopped. And then it started over. And this time it went in slow motion. And I would see every single frame of that movie. I'd see it in color. And then it would turn into a negative black and white. And at the moment that it turned into a negative black and white, my whole head, the back of my head, would just buzz and vibrate immensely. And it felt to me like it was being burned into the memory banks of my brain so I wouldn't forget what I was seeing. And at the exact same moment that all this was happening, I heard this voice, and this voice said, "This is what you're going to do with the plant music." Then it would go to the next frame. It would be color and then black and white. My head would buzz. "This is what you're going to do with the plant music." Then it'd go to the next one. And it repeated that whole thing till it went through that whole movie that I had just seen before with the big grandiose ending. I have no idea how long this took, or it was probably just a fleeting moment. Who knows? but it seemed like it took forever to go through this. And of course, it changed my life because when I came back into my body, I really felt like God or spirit or whatever name you want to call that power that's much greater than us spoke to me and told me why I was here. And so when I came back into my body, I had tears streaming down my face and chills all over my body, and my hairs were standing on end. And I went to the guys and said, how can I get this equipment and bring it back to the US? And they said, well, we don't even sell it. We're just still experimenting with it. And I said, but you don't understand. I'm like the Blues Brothers. I'm on a mission from God now, right? And of course, they didn't get that because they've never seen the Blues Brothers. But when I explained what happened in the vision, then they got it. And at that particular time, we only had 3 days left on our trip. And so, in that 3 days' time, they made me a piece of equipment to bring it back to the US. And I was one of the very first people to bring it back to the US at that time. And so that's how I was introduced to the plant music. And then,
Oh,
of course, the
this is
journey
so
from there has been never ending.
yes, that is so amazing. So
Yeah.
what was I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, can you tell us that grandiose like mission of yours? Like what is that grandiose?
Yeah, that grandiose ending is something I've been working on ever since, and that's the goal that I'm working towards. Is what I was shown is a new form of healing center or a new form of healing clinic, whatever. To me, the words healing center and healing clinic doesn't feel like the right terminology, that there's a new terminology that's coming with it, but it's the only language I know to equate it with. But it's a new form of a healing center that is all plant based. So it was, the herbs and the tinctures and the flower essences. And then the foundation of it was plant music, where you have a sound garden and you go into different parts of the sound garden for different ailments. And let's say you're suffering from anxiety and depression, and you go over into this area or this alcove of the sound garden, and you can either sleep, meditate, sit, lay down, but in that area are all the plants that heal and reduce anxiety and depression. And the plants are singing to you while they're doing it.
Wow.
Or maybe you have pain and you go into another area of the sound garden, and the plants that heal pain or relieve pain are playing music for you. And so that it was much bigger than that, but that's just a small idea of what I saw that day.
Okay, so I guess in essence what you're saying is just like spices in our cabinet are from different herbs. You're
Yep,
saying that there are different plants that can heal different ailments.
yep, yep. And herbologists and herbalism, um, uh, homeopathy, flower essences, they all are know about this because that's what their products are. What the plants have taught me since 2007 is that when you have an herb or an essential oil or a flower essence or any kind of a tincture that's made out of plants, they all have very powerful healing components to them, which is why they are used, and they have been used for centuries. What the plant music does, though, and how it's different in those products, is all of those products are a piece of a dead or dying plant. So they're taking the healing component from the plant either as it's dying or after it's dead. And they take the healing component out of it and then make their product. With the plant music, it's not a dead or dying plant, it's a live, living plant. So it's taking the components from essential oils, from herbs, from flower essences, wrapping them all up into one with a live plant through the music. And it's providing it to you through the music so you don't have to kill the plants to receive their healing properties.
That just sounds amazing. Very amazing. I'm trying to like wrap my mind around it right now.
I know it's like leading edge stuff. It's really
Yes.
hard. It's really hard to get your head wrapped around it sometimes because it is so leading edge.
Yes. So I have another question. So let's say like my house plants here right now. Would you say that they're singing, or would they have to be introduced to an already singing plant to kind of activate its singing?
Well, that totally depends on the environment the plant is living in. And so plants are affected by their environment, and their environment can be the home environment, their environment can be the energy of the people that they are around. The environment, of course, can be their soil and their light and the food supply and that kind of stuff that they get. But they are impacted by all of that, and they have such a deep consciousness and energetic connection that they know what's going on around them, and so they respond to that. So if you have, this is what the example I give when I do my presentations is, if you have two meals, if you have a meal and then you put, you know, some of the meal on one plate, some of the meal on another plate, and then you either pray or give gratitude or thanks over one of the plates of food, but you don't the other, and then do a taste test, you're going to notice a difference in the taste of the food. Just like the experiment that they teach kids in school, where they take two leaves, they take them off the plant, they put one in a closet in the dark somewhere and they ignore it. And then they take the other leaf somewhere where every day they're feeding it love, they're giving appreciation to it, they're talking to it, they're giving it thanks. And then after a month, you see what happens. Well, the one, of course, in the dark room that has been ignored dies, but the other one can continue to live and lives longer than the one who's died. And it's because of the environment that the plant is in. And so every plant plays music, every plant has a song. Whether the plant will play without the equipment for us to hear it is totally dependent upon its environment. So if you look, let's say in a metropolitan area, in a downtown area where there's trees along the road and the highway, in the median, chances are those plants won't play unless they're exposed to it and have a teacher plant helping them. Because is there ever anyone there paying attention to the tree other than the people that water them or cut them or treat their diseases? No. But if you go to a park where people go to be in nature and have fun with their pets and have fun with each other, and they're in this place and energy of gratitude just by being where they are, those trees and plants will probably play without having any kind of equipment.
So are you saying that a way to activate a plant's song is by giving it positive affirmation, love, and care?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if you've seen it on, I think it was on Facebook. There was an actual experiment they did. Gosh, I can't remember what university or what um, business they did it, but they had two of the same identical plants in separate containers. They were really tall plants, and the job of the children, the job of the students or the people there was they were supposed to talk in a loving way to one plant and then speak in a very hateful way to the other plant. And the experiment was to see, does the plant respond, right? And how does it respond to that? And what they discovered was, of course, the plant that everybody went up to and, oh, you're so beautiful. I love you. Thank you for your oxygen, did very well. But the plant that they went over to and said, I hate you. You're ugly. Can't stand you. It died, and it started dying. It's similar to, are you familiar with Dr. Emoto's work with water? Yeah. So similar to the experiments he did with water, where he'd take the crystals of water and place them loving words on the bottle that the water was in, or hateful words, and the crystals that formed were totally synchronistic with the words. And so plants respond in that way as well.
Okay. So I'm sure we have a lot of green thumb listeners, and I'm sure there are some people out there watering their plants and speaking love
Yep.
into each of their plants.
Yep.
Would you say that those plants are already singing, they just can't hear them? Or is there a way that you can hear your plant without any technology or
Absolutely, there is. Yes. Yes. And those gardeners understand totally what I'm talking about because they are deeply connected with their plants. And I can tell you, if they're a good gardener, they're talking to their plants anyway, whether it's out loud or telepathically, they're talking to their plants and giving them love and gratitude, and they understand that. And so here's an example. When I went to the redwood forest to record the redwood trees, I have an uncle that lives out there just north of on the north side of the redwood forest, and he goes hiking in the redwood forest every day. When I was there, he took me to some of his favorite hiking places. And the redwood trees are like hundreds and hundreds of feet tall. Well, the equipment doesn't have cords long enough to reach a leaf hundreds of feet in the air. So it took us a while to find a redwood tree that had leaves at least 6 feet off the ground so that we could work with it. And fortunately, we found one. And as soon as that tree started playing music, my uncle fell to his knees and tears started streaming down his face. He had this very visceral response. And what he said was every day when he's hiking through the forest, the redwood forest, he would hear this music in the background and he thought it was his imagination. But when he heard the music coming from the equipment, he said that's exactly what he's been hearing in his head while he's walking through the forest. He didn't realize he had actually been hearing their song until he heard it through the equipment. So, yes, you can hear it if you're
That's
attuned to it, if you're aware of it. It's like being conscious of it. You know what I mean?
that's amazing. Okay, so it sounds like the song isn't gonna be like a radio, you turn it up. It's gonna be almost like something very faint and kind of like that intuitive kind of feeling. Like
Hmm.
something's there, but it's not gonna be like a song playing on your
Right,
laptop or your iPhone or something like
right,
that.
right. It's totally, it is actually totally different. You can't, well, so let me back up here. There are bands all over the world that are actually playing music with the plants. And they're co-creating because the plants will play music with their co-creator very easily. In fact, I'm trying as we talk to connect a plant that I have right here so you can kind of hear
Okay.
the different sounds. But a plant will play with a musician and will adapt what it's playing based on what the musician is playing. There's like
Okay.
after about 20 minutes, it will start, there's a natural entrainment that takes place where the plant that starts entraining its music with the musicians. But the
Okay.
plant on its own will also entrain its music to, let me turn this down. The plant will also entrain its music to the audience. So I'm sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, so that leads me to you can almost manipulate the sound of the plant then. If you're encouraging it to play a certain sound, it'll start to synchronize with the musician, you're saying.
The plant can actually mimic it. So, for
Mimic.
example, I did my very first um, sound bath with the gong and the plant playing music. And at one point in time, the plant actually was mimicking the sound of the gong.
Hmm.
And so, what the equipment allows you to do is yes, the equipment allows you to manipulate. Um, I don't want to say manipulate. Not all plants will play all sounds. So if you think a musician will understand this, a synthesizer has so many different sounds in it. So you've got like the orchestra sound or the strings or the brass or guitar, the piano and those kind of things. Well, you can provide the plant the frequency or the sound of a piano, but unless the piano frequency is a frequency that the plant resonates with, the plant won't play it. But if it's a frequency the plant resonates with, it'll play that piano. But every plant will play differently just because every plant is different, just like you and I are different. Does that kind of help clear
It
that
does.
up a
It
little
almost
bit?
it sounds like to create an orchestra of different instruments. It's an orchestra of plants, meaning different types of plants, creating this harmonious orchestra of plant universal forest type thing.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So there is a certain amount of manipulation that can take place if the plant resonates with that frequency.
Okay. Here's another question. It sounds like the plant can be a receiver and also a producer.
Yes.
So I don't know if you've gotten this far in the studies, but can you tell us a little bit more of how much the plant receives and then by itself produces? Meaning, I don't even know what I mean by the question, but
Yeah, I'm not
but
sure I understand what you're.
so what
The
you're saying
plant
is
is receiving, it's receiving the sound from the synthesizer.
okay.
But and the only way we know that is if the plant plays that sound.
Okay. So let's say the plant's by itself in the forest. Unless the plant is activated by another sound, the plant plays the sound.
Yeah, it has its
repeating it, kind of mimicking it, correct?
right.
However, each plant has its own frequency, which then emanates its own form of healing because each frequency has its own vibe,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now
And
just,
then here comes the other question that'll blow your mind.
okay.
If there's no one there, is the plant making a sound and can you hear it? Just like, when the tree falls in the forest, if no one's there, does it make a sound? Because that's a whole nother conversation.
Mhm. I
So
mean,
now, go ahead.
there's a theory too that the universe has its own frequency, that the
Yes.
universe itself has its own sound. So if the universe itself is kind of creating a frequency, I'm not sure, but I suspect that the plant.
Okay, so I don't know if you can hear this. I just hooked up my go-to cola. It just stopped. I was hoping I could get it to play while you were talking. Okay, so go ahead.
So I was saying if the universe has its own frequency, I can hear it.
Can you hear that? So the plant does receive just like we receive, but the plant also gives out.
Yeah.
But what the plant gives out is going to be totally dependent upon everything in its environment. So, for example, can you hear that?
Okay.
Kind of, right? It sounds really different, right? But it also, there's many factors that go into play with what it sounds like. One of the things is the environment it's in. So, for example, the very first public event that I did in Louisville was the Boulder Daily Camera had come out and done an interview with me. And fortunately for me, they put it on the very front page of their entertainment section, I think it was. And they gave me some really good advertising for my event. So I had people come to my event that probably normally wouldn't have
Yeah.
because of that. And about 10 minutes after the event started, this guy walks in the door, big, burly guy, looked like a big old cowboy, kind of like John Wayne days type of cowboy. And he stopped at the door and was had his crossed, his legs crossed, real closed off body language. And I stopped what I was saying and I said, "Hey, sir, you can come on in. There's plenty of seating." He's like, "No, I don't even know if I'm going to stay." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So then I started talking about the secret life of plants and what some of the studies were that they've been doing and that they for a long time. And so as I start talking about the studies, this guy moves from the door and he moves to the back of the audience where my husband was videotaping. And at that time, I would take 10 different plants to my presentations to show how different plants play differently. All right, can you still hear that?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a go-to cola plant playing in the background. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Um, anyway, so he's in the back now, and all of a sudden, Pixie, my main plant, and all these other plants stop playing music. I so I just switched it to guitar. Okay, so it's going to sound a little different, but it doesn't sound like a guitar, does it? Yeah. So the plant's doing that, not the synthesizer. The plant is doing that. Okay. Um, so anyway, this guy Pixie stopped playing. So I tried to get another plant to play music. It wouldn't play music. Went to the next plant and it wouldn't play music. I went through all 10 of my plants and none of them would play music. And I didn't have any idea why. And so I thought, okay, let's do a little meditation. Let's see if we can connect heart to heart with the plants and give appreciation and gratitude and love. And maybe the plants will respond. I don't know, but let's see what happens. And so while we're doing this, not a single thing is happening. Not a peep is coming out of these plants. And I'm getting a little worried because I did this presentation and I charged people to come to it. And it's been almost an hour and the plants haven't played music. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to have to give their money back. And all of a sudden, while we're doing this meditation, I hear this plant that's on the back of the studio stage where I'm at. It doesn't belong to me, it belonged to the studio. And I heard this plant say, Me, I want to play, I want to play, right? And I also, right after that, hear Pixie, my plant, say, remember, I told you if we don't play music, I got it. I got you covered. Don't worry about it. And what had happened, I'm going to shut this off right now so I can't hear myself. So what had happened was the week before this meditation or this event took place, I had shut that off. I had meditated with Pixie, and I heard her say in the meditation, next week for the event, don't worry about it if we don't play music. I got it. And I thought, there's no way in HE double hockey sticks that plant said that. There's no way. There's no way a plant. How does she even know I'm doing an event in a week, let alone there's no way. So I literally thought I was losing my mind. I didn't tell anybody about it. And I just threw it out of my mind and went, they're going to send, someone after me and lock me up. And so during the meditation, when I'm trying to guide everybody to connect to the plants, she reminds me of what she had said in that conversation. And I was like, holy crap. Okay, fine. So we get done with our meditation. Nothing happened. The plants weren't playing music. And I said, this plant back here was talking to me. Could we see if maybe that plant would play music? Because none of mine are. And the studio owner's like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to hear her play music. And it had these big elephant leaves and it was this big viney plant. So the pot took two of us to move the plant close to where we were. So I moved the plant close to where we were. And when we do this, that gentleman that was at the door and didn't want to sit down and then in the back of the room is now over on the other side of the stage watching us. And he says, what are you doing? And I'm telling him, I'm hooking up the equipment. See, here's the grounding wires going in the soil. Here's the electrode on the clip that goes on the leaf, and I'm explaining to everybody. And maybe 30 seconds later, all of a sudden, the plant started playing music. Now, mind you, this is the first sound coming from any plants in almost an hour. And he says, where's that music's coming from? Who's playing that music? And by now the studio owner is like, the plant's playing the music. Come on, dude, catch up, right? And he got it. He got it at that moment because it wasn't one of my plants, right? Because this is so leading edge that the average skeptical person is like, I can't believe this. I can't wrap my head around this. She's playing a CD or a USB, or there's something in the soil that this it can't really come from plants. But once it came from someone else's plant that I had nothing to do with, he became convinced that, oh my gosh, it really is the plants playing music. So then he went and sat down in the very front row in the center seat. And after that, all 10 of my plants started playing music. And so after that experience, I contacted the people in Italy and went, I don't know if you've ever had this experience before, but this is what happened to me. And I just would like to talk about it. And they let me know that the inventor of this equipment said that in his nursery, local schools take their kids on field trips to his local nursery to find out about the plant and the music and learn the music of the plants and learn about it. And he said there was one day that it was a classroom of teenage boys. And he said they could tell when they walked in the door, there was a sense of indifference about every single one of them. They definitely did not want to be there. And he said he had 20 plants in his nursery playing music, and they were all happy and playing music. And as soon as the last boy stepped in the room, all of the plants stopped playing music. And so for an hour, he did the same thing that I did. He disconnected the plants and went to a different plant and a different plant, and a different plant, and nothing, not a peep out of any of the plants. So the hour ends. He apologizes to the teacher and the students that, sorry, the experiment didn't work. I apologize. And they started leaving single file out the door, with the teacher being the last one. And as soon as the last boy left the room, guess what happened? All the plants started playing music. And the teacher told him, I guess your experiment really did work. So, what do those two things tell us? They tell us that the plants are feeding off the energy and intention of the people around them, right? So, in his case, none of those boys wanted to be there. They didn't care about plant music, they didn't care about the plants, and the plants knew that. In my case, there was this gentleman, and I found out later there were 4 or 5 other people in the room too that felt the exact same way that he did, that I was some kind of fraud, that I was trying to pull the wool over people's eyes or something. And so they didn't believe it either. And their energy and their thoughts were so powerful that it overpowered all the other people that were like, wow, this is really cool. And so the plants responded to that and didn't play. Now, the thing that really can blow your mind is, how did my plant know that that was going to happen a week beforehand? Right? That's a whole nother conversation that we could spend hours on, because the consciousness of plants is extremely powerful, and they have a much broader sense of consciousness than we do. At least that's what I've learned.
Okay, so this actually is a great segment or segue into my question that I was going to ask right before you started the story. The universe has a sound.
Hmm.
Plants are receivers. So if the
Hmm.
universe has its own frequency, the universe is always vibrating or kind of emitting this sound. That means that the plants are going to be always receiving this vibration or sound,
Yep.
meaning it's collecting a consciousness, it's collecting some type of frequency that it'll ultimately be able to regurgitate, right? Or
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Just like we can, because
yeah,
it's not just the universe. The planet itself also has a sound,
yeah.
and all the planets do in the universe.
So I wonder, just like humans, how humans, are intuitive, psychic. They're receiving information from,
Hmm.
otherworldly, other realms. I wonder if the same thing with plants receiving
Absolutely. There's no
information.
doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind. The things that the plants have taught me and told me, that I could go to a psychic and get information from, that I've gotten from the plants, there's no doubt in my mind. I'm writing a book on all the different stories that I have around the insights that the plants have given me, that would be similar to a reading that you would get from someone, whether it's tarot or intuitive or whatever. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. That's why I say their consciousness, I believe that their consciousness is at a much greater level than ours, because they don't have a left brain that interferes.
Mhm.
We have a left brain that has a tendency to question everything and get in the way sometimes, or hold us back, or keep